Another tough break for Aaron Nagao. If he can't stay healthy this season, the smart move might be to bring Braeden Davis off of his red shirt.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That is right. You are locked on to Penn State Wrestling. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State Wrestling and Penn State Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Southern Scuffle takeaways, and Happy New Year to all the Penn State wrestling fans out there. It's been a lot of football talk, but now we get back to the mat. As Penn State, do they have 3 All-American contenders at 157? Well, the obvious answers are PJ Duke and Tyler Kasak, but Joe Sealey continues to impress. We'll talk about that later on. Josh Barr in a category by himself. Sure, there are other wrestlers at 197 pounds, but they do not compare to Josh Barr at this point in time. He runs that class. We got to begin, though, with unfortunate news. Again, tough break for Aaron Nagao. We will see where this actually goes, but I'm here to say it might actually be the smart decision, the right decision to bring Braeden Davis out of his red shirt. Aaron Nagao, we will get our answer in due time because Nate Desmond is there. Nate Desmond has proved that he can be serviceable at 141, that he gives you upside, that he can be a reliable option to go get you your standard amount of wins with potential for some upsets, because that wasn't his regular class. But the idea was that, so why are we going back on all of this? The intention was for Braeden Davis and Tyler Kasak to redshirt. Well, things change when Aaron Nagao is in and out of the lineup due to injury. And if this is long-term now, if he can't remain healthy, Nate Desmond, well, his original weight class was 125. It is difficult. It's impressive, but it's difficult for him to be at his top level of competition, bumping up not 1, but 2 weight classes as a true freshman. So let me explain why this might be the better avenue for Penn State. Bring Braeden Davis back if Aaron Nagao's unavailable, okay? So if this is going to keep Aaron Nagao 75%, like even still, entertain the idea, because we also see Braeden Davis, he's not wrestling at these freestyle opens. He's back in folk style too. So he's not just focusing on freestyle at the moment. So you can kind of see, okay, is there some evidence here? Is there some writing on the wall here that Penn State has a contingency plan in the event that Aaron Nagao can't go? And why not turn back to the guy who finished 5th at 133 pounds a season ago? So the right decision, if Aaron Nagao is not going to be 100%, if you can't have him at his best form, is to, well, I would say wrestle off, okay? Don't just automatically hand the spot over to Braeden Davis, but I would say wrestle off between Nate Desmond and Braeden Davis. But I would imagine that Davis, being the more experienced wrestler, he was focusing and planning on at 141. I got to imagine that he wins that wrestle off there. So Cael Sanderson even kind of alluded to it, yeah, we'd entertain it. We'd talk about it. We'd discuss it. And here we are, unfortunate circumstances. I don't like to see this. I mean, Aaron Nagao clearly was going to be the guy at 141, but if you can't stay out on the mat, you got to pivot if you're Cael Sanderson and Penn State. So this makes this the smart, this move would be the best option in my mind for Penn State, with Nagao potentially. Again, I am not here to report that Nagao, the only thing that we do know is he's dealing with an upper body injury, and him injury defaulting out of the Southern Scuffle after 1 match could be precautionary. I don't think it is. If you want my opinion, I think that's something that's serious. So Nagao impressed. By returning, by winning his first match, okay, it's great to see him back, and then he doesn't wrestle the remainder of the tournament. Why bringing Davis back into the fold makes sense for Penn State is because, yes, 1, Desmond is inexperienced at 141. He's a true freshman, but for him to jump up 2 weight classes and be competitive all the way through. He might be your best option if you fully intend to redshirt Davis. If Nagao isn't healthy, okay, he'd be your next best option after that. But that's still a disservice since he was focusing on 125 as a lightweight. Eventually, he might be a 141-pounder, okay, because there were discussions to start him at 133. Cael Sanderson's talked about him being available in any 3 of those first weight classes, 25, 33, 41. Davis has been focusing on 41. And now that I think about it more, okay, if it's on the table to bring him out of his red shirt and actually wrestle him, it might be better to defer the red shirt for 26, 27. Why? Because it's only going to get more crowded at those spots, at 33, at 41. So Desmond eventually will move up officially, right? Not just be a spot starter. You'll have Marcus Blaze. Oh, guess who you're going to get next season out of his red shirt? Masanosuke Ono. Braeden Davis, you bring him into the fold this season at 141 and then have him redshirt next season. And guess what? You bump him up another weight class to 149 and you give him next season to focus on adding weight and getting prepared. Because that was the idea this season. But then as I think about it, okay, next year, you still have a similar logjam where you have to push somebody out almost unnecessarily to a degree. You have to redshirt. I mean, that's kind of what Penn State's doing at 157, right? With how crowded it is there. But you actually, I'm thinking long-term here. 2 years down the road, Braeden Davis can be the replacement at 149 as that 5th-year senior. Again, this is a speculative blueprint because Shane Van Ness will move on in 2 seasons. So he'll have this year. He'll wrestle next season. And then there's a vacancy at 149. You can gradually move Braeden Davis up and defer the red shirt. So it's not an all or nothing thing here. You don't have to redshirt Braeden Davis this season. It made sense to, but Aaron Nagao taking that spot at 141, if he's unavailable, bring Braeden Davis back. He can easily be on the podium at 141. I can't say that he's a title contender. That's tough for me. But somebody that can finish within the top 8, okay, that's still nothing that you bat an eye at. So Davis, bring him back now. Or just entertain a wrestle off between him and Nate Desmond. And then defer that red shirt again when actually it can be more strategic next season when in theory you could have a lineup that is Marcus Blaze and Masanosuke Ono at 33 and 41, Shane Van Ness for his final season at 149. And then Davis returns in 27 and 28 after officially actually utilizing his red shirt at 149 for that following season. There's a method to the madness, right? It's all the puzzle shifting and moving the pieces around, right, for Cael Sanderson, but they can make this work, actually. What it means for Aaron Nagao long-term, that is to be determined. Just another unlucky break here for Nagao. And again, it's all speculation, but I still don't like to see, in my opinion, that is tough because Josh Barr, who's dealing with an injury, wrestled all the way through at the Southern Scuffle. Clearly, there's cause for concern here. Again, just trying to read the writing on the wall that, yes, it was probably precautionary, but also because Nagao is just not where he needs to be in terms of his health, in terms of his physicality. So that is something to monitor. If we see more of Nate Desmond, okay, then maybe they're waiting on Nagao to fully recover. The second you see Braeden Davis, he's in the lineup. He's locked in. The red shirt is over because he can't wrestle. Once he wrestles one match, there's no more red shirt on the table. So that's how you know the plan that Penn State's going to go with immediately. All right, let's talk about Josh Barr because coming off of an injury, goes to the Southern Scuffle and majors the number 3 wrestler at 197 pounds in Stephen Little. Barr's in a tier all by himself. We'll talk about that next year, plus some of the other results at the Southern Scuffle here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. What is NBA Happy Hour? It is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before all of the action even starts. Every Friday, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, that has become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening up the FanDuel app during happy hour is always going to bring you something new. You got boosts, you got bonuses, you got surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect, right before the games, right before the weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA happy hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern, a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA happy hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And again, thank you for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen or your first watch every single day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you haven't already, go check out the all-new Everydayer Club. As a member of the Everydayer Club, you will get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Nittany Lions compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcasting app. You will also get an invite to a members-only Discord for the Locked On Everydayer Club, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You can go to lockedonnittanylions.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Again, that is the Everydayer Club. Josh Barr is all by himself in this weight class. We'll also talk about some of the other results here at the Southern Scuffle before we get to Penn State having 3 All-Americans at 157. Crazy as it sounds, it's true. Josh Barr, though, just stands alone. In Penn State, I do want to give a shout out to Connor Mirasola because Barr isn't able to separate himself like this without having someone like Connor Mirasola there to anchor that spot so that he can rest. Because again, he was injured at the U23 tournament. Okay, he was overseas, and then he comes back, and Penn State is able to allow him to rest, to rejuvenate, and that's why he's able to get back to the spot. Because honestly, it seems like Josh Barr is a new caliber of wrestler. I mean, he looks so much better, significantly better, and that's crazy to think that, oh, okay, this is an NCAA finalist from a season ago. He'll take a step forward, but how much of a step can he take? Well, let's put it into perspective here. Stephen Little, who is currently the #3 ranked wrestler, according to Intermat. He just went out there. They both met at the Southern Scuffle in the finals. Okay, so this could potentially be an NCAA final. What was once a close call, it was a 4-1 sudden victory that Josh Barr did, in fact, win. He won that match the last time ago. Okay, so they meet again. 9-1 major decision. If Barr is doing that against the #3 wrestler at 197 pounds. And again, somebody that was right there with him. It took sudden victory, and it could have gone either way. Barr still gets the match-winning takedown at the end of the day there. But in a year's time, Barr has exceeded that gap, has taken it to a whole nother level. Rocky Elam at Iowa State, extremely talented, undefeated on the season. Masoma Indine has been a great addition for Iowa. Okay, Joey Novak, he looks good, but he's dropped a couple of matches. I like Justin Rademacher a ton, but is Rademacher really going to start to hit his stride by the time you get to NCAAs? I would consider him a dark horse to get to the finals, but in my mind, I don't see any of them really taking Barr down to the wire. Are they going to all be competitive? Are they all going to be tough outs? Absolutely. And again, watch out for Rademacher. That's just watching him go through the freestyle circuit and everything else, following that over the summer. Rademacher impressed me a ton. So, but outside of those 5 names there, nobody else compares. So it's Josh Barr, and then the cluster of Elam, Little, Indine, Novak, and Rademacher. Any of those guys could emerge. I would imagine that most people would agree that Rocky Elam is the favorite of that group to meet Josh Barr in the finals. But hey, that's where I think the intrigue is amongst those 5 wrestlers, is because you don't have a definitive answer. Okay, you might have a presumed favorite, but that's not the conversation here with Josh Barr. It's Josh Barr and then trying to find someone who's going to emerge from that scuffle over at 197. And that's why Penn State, the wrestling program, it is the caliber that it is, because it elevates you beyond what you thought your peak was going to be. Okay, they do those freestyle circuits. They do the season the way that they do in order to keep you at your healthiest, to keep you at your peak most of the time, and then get you to a point where you're at your top level by the time March rolls around. So if Josh Barr is doing this now against the number 3 wrestler in Stephen Little, again, if this was another sudden victory, I don't think I would come on the show and talk like this. But it's the fact that you do this now. Imagine what Barr is going to look like as he continues to shake off the rust. But he hasn't shown any signs of any rust. That's the thing. He's come out firing on all cylinders to this point in time. He looks like a better version of himself, despite not wrestling at all this season up until the end of December, going into the new year here. It's very telling with where Barr is compared to everyone else. Again, I mean that is no disrespect. I'm honestly more impressed than anything else. I thought, hey, just logically thinking here, Barr's going to have to, just kind of get back into the groove of everything, go about his business. And then by the time the end of January, give him a few weeks and then he'll start to look like himself again. No, he looks beyond himself, right? That's the point I'm trying to get across. So good luck to everyone in the 197-pound weight class. Barr runs the show, and this is only his 2nd season, 3rd season, 4th season. I say good luck to the rest of the class at this point. Now let's talk about some of the other results from the Southern Scuffle. And we got to talk about the champions. Okay, so Connor Pierce gets a title at 149. Had to pull off some upsets along the way. He defeated Max Peterson, the number 24 overall wrestler from North Dakota State, and also defeated the 26th ranked wrestler in Brock Herman to capture a final. And while we're having our conversation in segment 3, Joe Sealey ends up taking home the Southern Scuffle title at 157 pounds. Now, the intriguing bout was the one against Daniel Zepeda. Most wrestling fans will recognize that name. Zepeda was a top 5 ranked pound-for-pound wrestler in the class of 2025. Zepeda, who's over at NC State now, that was a close match. And Sealey was trailing, but then ultimately got a takedown, went ahead, and then Zepeda, unfortunately, had to injury default. So we can read into that as much as we want. Keeping that close, getting the leading takedown at the time. It's unfortunate that Zepeda had to injury default, but it's still a win. It's still a title for Joe Sealey. And a lot of people immediately were buzzing on social media. Why is Joe Sealey at Penn State? Why doesn't he transfer out? It's because people believe that he can go and start anywhere else and be a contender, be somebody that can get on the podium. We'll talk about that more in segment 3. William Henkel, true freshman, gets a title at 174. He ends up upsetting Aiden Wallace of Duke in the semifinals, 8-3, and then goes on to win the title. How about Asher Cunningham? Asher Cunningham at 184. He gets a championship. He gets a title at 184. Had a couple of upsets on in his own right, for his own right. Christian Hansen, number 30 overall wrestler out of Cornell, defeats him in the quarterfinals. And then he defeats number 25, Caleb Campos of American, 12-9, close one in the finals, but certainly I think was in control with that one. We talked about Josh Barr winning his title. And again, a major decision, 9-1. He also pinned Branson John of Maryland in the semifinals, who is ranked number 15. Like I said, Barr just continues to distance himself from the rest of the crowd at 197. Okay. As we know, Aaron Nagao unfortunately had to injury default. I'll also talk about here some of the other wrestlers. Lucas Cochran ended up injury defaulting as well, and he took 6th place. Kael Sanderson went 1-2. Kayasin Garcia went 1-2. Ty Watson did not win a match at 165. Sean Daigle went 1-2 at 174. Mason Ellis went 1-2 at 197, and Dawson Bundy went 1-2, at heavyweight. Penn State ends up winning the team title at the Southern Scuffle with 143.5 points. Now, we got to talk about the debate that's going on social media, because Joe Sealey continues to impress. There's some people questioning why he's even at Penn State to begin with when he could transfer and go start anywhere else. And other people that scoff at the idea that Penn State actually does have 3 of the best 8 wrestlers at 157 pounds. Let's discuss coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, the packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever, but actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating. With long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Open up the Game Time app. You can see upcoming college football games, upcoming sporting events, choose your favorite team. You'll be surprised how fast it was to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. And one of the best features, you will be able to see the view from your seat ahead of time. So select your tickets and you will see your point of view ahead of time, which is great, especially if you've never been to a stadium or a venue. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets and sporting event tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. So Penn State has 3 All-Americans sitting at 157 right now. Yes, they do. I can say that with confidence with what we've seen from Joe Sealey early on. And again, social media immediately reacting and saying, I mean, that's what tells me all of this, that I'm on the right side of this conversation and not just exaggerating that. Oh, because Joe Sealey was the number 2 overall pound for pound ranked wrestler in the class of 2024 behind Luke Lillidahl. So that's the pedigree that Joe Sealey came in with. And why Sealey didn't get off to a hot start at Penn State and looked, okay, well, Sealey's overrated. The guy had presumably a long-term injury. According to Cael Sanderson, had a medical procedure. Again, they didn't disclose any details. But that's why Sealey, and then Sealey was expected to basically be out for his true freshman season, and he still came back and wrestled the best that he could, despite those health circumstances. So now we're starting to see Joe Sealey really get into form, really start to wrestle as the guy that we thought of him as a prospect. And you see that going toe-to-toe with someone who's comparable. Okay, they're both early in their collegiate careers. Yes, Joe Sealey is a year ahead in terms of eligibility, but it's not like Daniel Zepeda's just some pushover with high upside. No, this is the number 5 overall pound for pound recruit in the class of 25, adjacent to where Joe Sealey was. So who knows if Zepeda ultimately, right, if he injury defaults and everything, if he doesn't injury default, does that go in favor of Joe Sealey? It very well might, because again, he gets that takedown late and momentum swings all the way back in his favor because he was trailing. And why I'm focusing on Joe Sealey is because that's where the debate is. Okay. PJ Duke, he's going to be the favorite. He's going to be a favorite at 157. I would argue that he is the favorite at 157. You throw Tyler Kasak into the mix. You couldn't have gone wrong if you're Penn State with wrestling either guy, whether it was PJ Duke. I think PJ Duke makes more sense because you're not going to get him at 157 forever. Tyler Kasak is going to be able to hold 157 for the remainder of his career. Eventually, PJ Duke is going to go up. So if you have him here at his true freshman season, you might as well use him and wait to defer his red shirt and his development stage for another time. But PJ Duke, All-American, and not just an All-American, a title contender, arguably a title favorite. Tyler Kasak was a title contender coming in to this season. So you have, at a minimum, 2 title contenders between Duke and Kasak who would fit, if let's say you put them, depending on where you rank them, they would probably meet in the semifinal or even meet in the final if one of them's right. One of them's the 1 seed or one of them's the 2 seed and the 4 seed, right, in that instance. And then where would Joe Sealey go? So Joe Sealey, this is where it gets intriguing because 157 is actually a pretty crowded weight class. You would have Ty Waters still, Brandon Cannon, Vince Serban. And again, I'm rattling off the internet rankings at this moment. PJ Duke is ranked number 4. Eventually he'll move up. You have Antrell Taylor of Nebraska, who's the defending champion at 157, who PJ Duke beat on the freestyle circuit. Landon Robidoux, Meyer Shapiro, don't forget about him, who hasn't wrestled a lot this season. Because he's been dealing with health and wants to get back at full strength. And then Cannon Webster, and then Daniel Cardenas, who went toe-to-toe with PJ Duke before Duke ultimately pulled away. And that's kind of where I would slot Joe Sealey in. I would put Sealey in, so that puts him within the top 10. Okay, well, that doesn't get him onto the podium, Zach. The argument is still that, okay, anything can happen, though. The fact that he's right in the mix. I didn't rattle off a bunch of other names and say, well, he could be an All-American. I'd put him at, 15th or 16th in the tournament in the rankings. No. If you were to include all three at NCAAs, that's the thing. If you have one representative, Joe Sealey, so you take PJ Duke and Tyler Kasak for the sake of this conversation, they are redshirting. So then Joe Sealey is the guy at 157 for Penn State in a hypothetical NCAA tournament. He's finishing on the podium. PJ Duke, Tyler Kasak, for obvious reasons, are finishing on the podium because they are title contenders. So you have three All-Americans at 157. However you splice it. If you include all three of them, okay, that's where it gets a little complicated, but it's not like this pushes Joe Sealey way down the list. I include Tyler Kasak and PJ Duke in my theory, and then you still have Joe Sealey within the top 10. It's why people debate, or people say, well, Penn State should just send its B team over to the NCAA tournament just for fun, to see how that would go. But if you replace Joe Sealey if you replace PJ Duke or Tyler Kasak in the lineup with Joe Sealey, you're still getting an All-American one way or another at 157. If you include all three, well, okay, that's where he might be bumped out of the All-America conversation, because then the class gets a little crowded here. This is a great 157 class. I like it a ton, whether it's PJ Duke, whether Tyler Kasak would have wrestled this year. This is an exciting and intriguing class at 157. So that'll be a ton of fun to watch when March rolls around. And then I just want to address it briefly. Joe Sealey, why does he stay at Penn State? Why does anybody stay at Penn State? Because it is difficult to get in that mat room. It is exclusive. You are getting the best training. You're getting the best training partners. You're getting the best coaching. You're a part of the best system. So Joe Sealey, in the scheme of things, oh, well, he doesn't start for the folk style. He's not the starter in the folk style lineup. Okay, eventually his time might come. It's the same argument that people try to make for Connor Mirasola or anybody else. Why do those guys stick around? The same thing happened with Aaron Nagao. Why stay? Why stay? Because you get to train and be a part of the best program in the country. The being in the folk style lineup is only one factor that they consider when it comes to being a part of Penn State. It's about being in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. It's about being a part of all the things that I just mentioned. It's about setting up the connections for a lifetime. So maybe Joe Sealey values things just beyond being the starter at 157 pounds for 3 or 4 seasons. Maybe it's about being the best freestyle wrestler that he can be. Maybe it's about building connections beyond wrestling, or just always having that connection into the Penn State mat room, right? So Joe Sealey, and he might have his opportunity sooner rather than later. Who knows? He's being patient. Now that's a debate in itself, because Mitchell Messenbrink moves on, and then PJ Duke will redshirt, and then Tyler Kasak comes back. Okay. So, right. I can't speak for Joe Sealey and how he feels about being the starter, but I also think it's safe to presume that he's there for more than just a chance at the starting lineup when it comes to folk style. He's considering what consequences, what positive consequences he can have in freestyle and beyond the sport of wrestling. So that's why he's at Penn State, and why he doesn't just jump into the transfer portal, because he's not the guaranteed starter year in and year out. That is where I will wrap things up on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. I appreciate each and every one of you for joining the show. Again, Happy New Year to all the Penn State wrestling fans, as we haven't talked a lot of wrestling. They went on a bit of a break, and football and the transfer portal have been pretty crazy, to say the least. But we will have more conversations now that Penn State wrestling is getting ready to get back into action with the Big Ten dual meet schedule. Going to Wrestle Rutgers this weekend. And just awesome to have these conversations back in full swing. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around all your favorite Penn State sports teams.